Hey guys, this is part 3 of my Toshiba Satellite Pro A50-E-157 found in the sink. So we left this last week where I established that we had 3.3 volts always on present on this chip right here, and we had 5 volts always on present here, so it seemed like this was functional. However, that 3.3 volts is meant to be present on the startup chip and on the power button right up here, but it wasn't present on either of them. So there was a lot of damage in around where the startup chip was after it was found in the sink. So I'm suspecting that there's some sort of issue there. However, one thing I wanted to do was, just as a sort of a last hit and hope, I jumpered from here with my tiny little jumper wire from this point, which is connected to our VReg 3.3, that's our always on 3.3 volts. So I jumpered from here to this pad over here, which is connected to this pin here, which is our power button. So I jumpered from there to there and just established with my multimeter that I had 3.3 volts on this. However, when I plugged the power button back in and pressed it, still nothing happened. So I then went around to the front of the board. Let me see if I still have the image for the front of the board. So on the front of the board, this is our startup chip right down here. Now you can actually see on it, because I did a good job of cleaning this up before I took any pictures of it, but the issue was you can see some of the markings on it there of where there was water and corrosion and everything on it. So there was, corrosion all of these parts here, so I don't know if that's affected it. At no stage did we have 3.3 volts on this either. So I suspect that our issue lies somewhere in this section, or maybe the startup chip is gone. The last thing I tried to do was just to remove this. However, when I removed that, I just made a mess of it. That's the picture of it there. And when I moved it, I actually knocked off a couple of the capacitors here. When I took it off, and I wanted to see then if the 3.3 volts would come online also, but nothing else happened. But what I suspect is that the water damage, it got at these components here, or the startup chip, and something in there is blown. But I'm going to leave this one for the moment. I think we've learned quite a bit at this. I know I certainly have, about our 3.3 volt always on and our 5 volt always on. I know that will be useful in the next videos. I was looking for a schematic for this startup chip, because I wanted to try and track where does the 3.3 volts come into this chip, and maybe try and trigger it on manually or something like that. But I just cannot find a data sheet for this to just find out which button is the power button on it. So I'm going to leave it at that. What we might do in the next one is, if I can find a board that we have the startup chip schematic or data sheet for, I'm gonna work on the power button circuit and just finding where it connects back to this chip right here. I've found a very useful website, actually. It's a bit of a hidden gem. I'm gonna post it next and just show you what I've learned from it. This channel is called Mechatronics Fix. Okay, this just came up in a YouTube search. So this guy runs through a number of the different chips on a laptop motherboard and explains what they do. So I'm just going to cut the sound and look at it here, but he basically just draws it out, and he then identifies the important pins on the chip and tells you what they all do. And I found it quite useful. He also goes through other chips, like which one? This one here is also his as well. So he's a laptop charging IC explained as well, and he has the 3 and 5 volt regulator. He draws that out as well. It doesn't look like, it doesn't look like it has fancy graphics or anything like that, but I think it's a good video, and I think it's worth watching. If you guys have any other good videos or books that you think are worth reading or watching on the subject, just maybe post them below, and we'll build up like a database of, because what I find is that a lot of the books that are written they're very, very difficult to read, if I could just put it like that. But I'm always interested in finding something that makes the topic a little bit more digestible, and I thought this video channel was quite good. Maybe you could have a look at a few of the videos and post below what you think yourself. Nothing much else came in this week for repairs, so that's about all I've got this week, guys, unfortunately. I'm sure there's somebody who's in the process of breaking something at the moment, and hopefully it'll be on my desk on Monday, and when it is, I'll fix it and I'll post it here. That's all for this week. Have a good week, and I'll speak to you next week. Thanks.